Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a message your soul has been waiting to hear. This is not just another motivational video. This is a wake-up call, a mirror, and a map, all in one. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on the lies the world told you about who you're supposed to be. We're confronting the labels, the misconceptions, the doubts, and the quiet shame you've carried for far too long. You were never meant to live a watered-down version of your life. You were never meant to shrink just to be accepted, to be silent just to be loved, or to be perfect just to be enough, no more. Today, we're exposing the truth behind 20 deep and personal misunderstandings that have held you back. And as we break each one, you'll begin to rise, not into someone new, but into the woman or man you were always meant to be. This isn't about motivation, it's about transformation. It's about reclaiming your voice, your power, your identity. Because once you know the truth, you can never go back to living the lie. Let's begin.
You always make it about you. Let's be honest. No one likes being around someone who constantly turns every conversation back to themselves. Imagine someone sharing their pain, their joy, or even their daily struggles, and all you can think to do is respond with, "That happened to me too, and let me tell you how I handled it." It may seem like a way to connect, but in reality, it can come off as self-centered and dismissive. People want to feel heard. They want to feel like their experiences matter, like they're not just a stepping stone to another one of your stories. This is one of the most subtle, yet powerful signs that people may begin to resent your presence. Over time, they'll stop opening up. They'll distance themselves emotionally. They might still smile in front of you, but behind your back, the truth is growing, slowly, silently, and dangerously. You become the person they avoid when they need real support. You don't have to silence yourself to be liked. You don't need to stop sharing your journey. But if every sentence you say begins with "I," you're not building connection, you're building a wall. True connection comes from balance, knowing when to speak and when to simply listen with full presence. People aren't drawn to those who dominate the spotlight. They're drawn to those who share it. The ones who can sit in silence with a friend's pain. The ones who celebrate others without needing to shift the attention. If people feel like they always play second fiddle in your company, they will slowly start fading into the background of your life, not because they hate you from the start, but because your inability to prioritize others plants that seed of quiet resentment. Self-awareness is the first step toward change. Ask yourself, when was the last time I listened without interrupting? When was the last time I asked someone how they were and really waited for to answer? These moments might seem small, but they are everything. They're how we show respect, care, and emotional intelligence. If you recognize this trait in yourself, don't beat yourself up. We all want to feel seen, heard, and understood, but so does everyone else. Begin again. Practice asking more than telling. Let silence be your teacher. You'll be amazed how differently people start responding to you when they feel like you care about them just as much as you care about yourself. Because in the end, people won't remember everything you said, but they'll always remember how you made them feel. And if how you make them feel is invisible, unimportant, or unheard, then don't be surprised when their love turns into distance. You constantly one-up people. Let's talk about a habit that slowly poisons relationships, constantly one-upping others. This behavior might not seem toxic at first glance. In fact, some people do it unconsciously, thinking they're sharing experiences or being relatable. But when every time someone opens up, you feel the need to share something bigger, better, or more intense, what you're really doing is invalidating their moment. Your friend says they got promoted. You reply, "That's cool. I just landed a job with double the pay." Someone tells you they're exhausted from working 60 hours this week. You hit back with, "That's nothing. I worked 80 last week and still hit the gym every morning." It doesn't matter how impressive your story is. If it makes the other person feel small, overlooked, or dismissed, it's damaging your connection with them. People don't open up to be challenged. They open up to be heard, supported, and celebrated. When you constantly try to top their experience, it makes them feel like they're in a competition they never signed up for. It makes them stop wanting to share anything with you, because deep down, no one likes feeling second best in their own life story. What's more dangerous is that this behavior often stems from insecurity. The need to prove yourself to be seen as superior or more accomplished is usually driven by inner doubt, not confidence. And others can feel that energy. They might not be able to put it into words, but they sense the emotional imbalance. Instead of enjoying your presence, they begin to feel drained by it. And eventually, they start avoiding you altogether, not with harsh words, but with subtle distance, less communication, fewer invitations. That's how silent resentment grows. So how do you change this? It starts with humility and empathy. When someone shares a win, let it be their moment. Celebrate it without bringing in your own story into it. When someone expresses pain, resist the urge to match it or outdo it. Just listen, just be there. Learn to recognize that someone else's success or struggle doesn't take anything away from you. Their joy isn't your loss, and their pain isn't your stage. Life is not a scoreboard, it's a journey. And if you spend your time constantly trying to be ahead, you'll find yourself running alone. When you let others shine without competing, you shine too, because people remember those who made space for them, those who made them feel valued, respected, and emotionally safe. So ask yourself today, do you listen to understand or do you listen to respond? That answer will reveal a lot about why people either feel drawn to you or secretly can't stand being around you.
You always make it about you. Here's something many people don't realize. Not everything needs to circle back to you. When someone's sharing their struggles, victories, doubts, or dreams, they're not always inviting you to bring the spotlight back to your life. But if you constantly redirect conversations to your own experiences, your own problems, or your own opinions, you send a clear message, intentional or not, that you're more important. Let's break it down. Imagine someone opens up about a recent breakup. Instead of listening with presence and compassion, you immediately launch into, "Yeah, that reminds me of when I broke up with my ex. It was even worse because..." Now they're sitting in silence, watching you steal the moment. Or maybe a friend tells you they're nervous about starting a new job. Instead of asking them what they're feeling or encouraging them, you cut in with a long story about your first day at a new job 10 years ago. Here's the truth. When every conversation has to come back to you, people stop opening up. They start to feel like their experiences don't matter, that every interaction is just a setup for your monologue. And over time, this behavior pushes people away. Not because you're a bad person, but because you've made them feel invisible in your presence. Let's be clear, sharing your experiences isn't wrong. In fact, done the right way, it can build connection. But timing and intention matter. Are you offering your story to relate and support them? Or are you unconsciously trying to shift the focus? The line is thin but critical. People crave to be heard, to be understood, to feel that their feelings are valid and seen. And when you allow them that space without interruption, without comparison, without a sudden detour into your own drama, that's when connection thrives. You don't have to fix everything. You don't need to always give advice. So, me times, just saying, "That must be really tough, I'm here for you," is more powerful than any story you could share. Sometimes, the most impactful thing you can say is nothing. Just being present, listening fully, giving someone the rare gift of undivided attention. And here's the kicker. The more space you give others to be themselves, the more they'll respect you, trust you, and want you around. You won't need to force your importance into the conversation. They'll naturally see your value through how you make them feel. So ask yourself this. Are you the kind of person who dominates every conversation, or the one who leaves people feeling heard and appreciated? Because if it's always about you, don't be surprised when people start stepping back. Real connection is about mutual presence, not personal performance. You're passive-aggressive instead of honest. Let's talk about one of the most subtle yet toxic behaviors that silently destroys relationships: passive aggressiveness. You might think you're being polite or keeping the peace, but what you're really doing is planting seeds of resentment, confusion, and distrust in the minds of everyone around you. Passive-aggressive behavior is when someone expresses negative emotions in an indirect way. It might look like sarcastic comments, silent treatments, backhanded compliments, or vague, guilt-inducing statements like, "It's fine, I'll just do it myself," when it's clearly not fine. And here's the truth. People hate this. Not because you're angry, but because you're hiding that anger behind fake smiles and sharp-edged comments. People don't trust what you say because your words and energy don't match. And when people can't predict how you'll react or what you really mean, they begin to keep their distance. No one wants to walk on eggshells around someone who can't communicate directly. Here's the thing. Being passive-aggressive is often rooted in fear. Fear of confrontation, fear of rejection, fear of not being liked. So instead of saying, hey, that upset me, or I feel left out, you bury it and try to signal your disappointment in sideways, emotionally confusing ways. But what you end up doing is pushing people away. They don't feel safe with you. They feel manipulated, or worse, gaslighted. You may think you're avoiding conflict, but in reality, you're just creating unspoken conflict that lingers in the air, poisons the vibe, and leaves everyone feeling uncomfortable. If you want people to respect and genuinely like you, speak up with honesty and clarity. You don't have to be harsh or aggressive. Being assertive is about expressing your thoughts, feelings, and needs directly while still being respectful. Try saying things like, hey, I felt a bit overlooked in that conversation. When you cancel last minute, I feel like my time isn't valued. It upset me when that happened, and I want to talk about it. It's not weakness, to be honest. It's maturity, it's leadership, and most importantly, it builds trust. People will always prefer someone who communicates openly over someone who makes them decode mixed messages. Don't be the person others avoid, because they never know if you're truly okay or secretly holding a grudge. Because here's the harsh reality. Passive aggressiveness isn't harmless. It's emotional warfare with a smile. And over time, it leaves people drained, frustrated, and ready to walk away. So if you want deeper connections and less hidden resentment, drop the sarcasm, ditch the games, and start being real with how you feel. Honesty doesn't push people away. It invites them closer. You make everything about you. Let's be real. No one likes a person who constantly turns every conversation into a monologue about themselves. This might be tough to hear, but if you have a habit of making everything revolve around you, your achievements, your problems, your opinions, people may be quietly resenting you. Why? Because deep down, everyone wants to feel seen, heard, and valued. Think about it. Have you ever tried to share something personal or painful, and the other person immediately responded with, "Oh yeah, that happened to me too," and launched into their own story? It's dismissive. It sends a clear message. Your experience doesn't matter as much as mine. You might not be doing it intentionally. Maybe you're trying to relate or contribute. But when the pattern repeats, when you dominate conversations, interrupt others, or constantly steer the spotlight back to yourself, it becomes exhausting for those around you. Eventually, they stop opening up, they stop reaching out, they grow distant, because they've learned that being around you means taking a back seat in their own life. Here's the hard truth. When you make everything about you, you rob others of the chance to feel important. Relationships, whether friendships, family ties, or romantic connections, thrive on reciprocity. That means give and take. It means listening without waiting for your turn to speak. It means asking questions, showing genuine interest, and allowing others to shine too. Because when people feel like you care about them, they want to be around you more. But when they feel invisible in your presence, they'll start pulling away. And it's not just about conversations. Making everything about you can also show up in the way you handle conflict or celebrate success. If someone shares good news and your first instinct is to compete or overshadow it, you kill the moment. If someone opens you about pain and you respond by shifting the topic to your own struggle, you rob them of support. Here's what you need to understand. It's not always about you, and that's a good thing. Life becomes richer when you take time to celebrate others, empathize with their journey, and step outside your own world. The people who are loved and respected the most are often those who know how to make others feel important. They listen with full attention. They remember the little details. They celebrate others without needing to be the center of attention. So if you truly want to be someone people love being around, practice the power of presence. Listen more than you speak. Be curious, not just expressive. Don't just talk. Connect. Don't just share. Support. Because in the end, people don't hate confidence. They don't hate success. What they secretly hate is self-absorption disguised as conversation. Choose humility over ego. Choose empathy over attention. And watch how your relationships transform. You make everything about yourself. Let's talk about something that silently pushes people away. Self-centeredness. If every conversation somehow circles back to you, your achievements, your problems, your opinions, or your needs, you may be unintentionally building walls instead of bridges. Here's the harsh truth. No one likes to feel invisible. We've all been in conversations where someone barely listens. You share something meaningful, and they immediately turn it into a story about themselves. You mention you're tired. They're even more exhausted. You say you had a rough day. They say theirs was worse. You express joy, and somehow they redirect the spotlight. At first, people may smile and nod. They might even humor you. But over time, it gets old. Because true connection isn't about competing for attention. It's about mutual exchange. It's about being present. And when you constantly center yourself in every situation, you make others feel like side characters in a story they never asked to be in. This behavior doesn't always come from arrogance. Sometimes it stems from insecurity, the need to prove your worth, to feel important, or to be seen. But ironically, the more you talk about yourself, the less people want to engage with you. It feels draining, one-sided, unfulfilling. People crave conversations where they feel heard, where their stories, struggles, and victories matter too. If someone walks away from a conversation with you feeling smaller, ignored, or dismissed, they'll start avoiding you, not out of hate, but out of emotional self-preservation. Self-centeredness also shows up in decision-making. Do you constantly demand things go your way? Are you only supportive when something benefits you? Are your friendships transactional? If people feel like they only matter when they're useful to you, resentment will quietly build. The solution? Practice emotional generosity. That means listening without interrupting, asking questions and actually caring about the answers, celebrating others without shifting the focus, offering support without expecting something in return. It's not about denying your own needs, it's about expanding your awareness to include the needs of others. Because the truth is, when you give people space to shine, they'll remember how you made them feel, and they'll want you around, not just tolerate you. Also, watch your social media presence. If your posts scream, "Look at me," 24/7, people will begin to roll their eyes. Yes, it's your platform. But just like in real life, people gravitate toward balance, authenticity, vulnerability, and humility over constant self-promotion. You don't have to be the center of attention to be valued. Often, the most loved people are those who see others clearly, who ask about your day and truly mean it. So, step back, shift the focus, be the person who listens with intent, encourages with sincerity, and connects without agenda. Because when people feel seen by you, they won't just like you. They'll respect you, they'll trust you, and they'll want you in their life for the long haul. You're always negative or complaining. Let's be real, life is hard. We all go through storms. We all have reasons to be upset, frustrated, or drained. But here's what many people don't realize. Negativity is contagious, and if you carry it with you like a badge, people will eventually run in the opposite direction. Negativity doesn't just mean being sad or upset. It's a pattern of always seeing the bad in everything. It's constant complaining, constant criticizing, constantly pointing out flaws in people, situations, or even the weather. If every time you open your mouth something negative spills out, it becomes emotionally exhausting for those around you. No one wants to be around a dark cloud every day. People crave uplifting energy. They want to feel hopeful, inspired, and seen. If your default setting is always doom and gloom, you suck the oxygen out of the room. And yes, people will start distancing themselves, not because they're heartless, but because they need to protect their peace. You may not even realize you're doing it. It starts small, complaining about work, complaining about your weight, complaining about your friends. But over time, if there's no balance, if you're never grateful, never encouraging, never hopeful, it starts to weigh people down. And eventually, they associate you with how they feel when they're around you. Drained, discouraged, heavy. Understand this. Complaining does not equal connection. You might think venting creates closeness, but only in moderation. If that's your only form of expression, you're just offloading your emotional trash onto someone else's peace. Now, here's the empowering part. You can flip it. You don't have to fake positivity. You don't have to plaster on a smile and pretend life is perfect. But you can develop emotional balance. You can acknowledge pain without becoming its prisoner. You can talk about your problems while also expressing gratitude. You can face hardship and still inspire others with your resilience. People admire those who can go through the fire and still carry light. They want to be around individuals who lift rooms, not lower the temperature every time they speak. Optimism is magnetic, positivity is healing, and gratitude, it's transformational. So ask yourself, when people leave your presence, do they feel heavier or lighter? Do they feel heard and inspired, or do they feel emotionally depleted? It's not about perfection, it's about awareness. Start catching your patterns. Start redirecting your focus. Replace complaining with problem solving. Replace criticism with curiosity. Replace hopelessness with purpose. Because the more you become the type of person who brings peace, hope, and resilience into a room, the more people will gravitate towards you without even knowing why. Your energy introduces you before you speak. Make sure it tells a story people want to hear.
You make everything about you. Let's get one thing straight. Confidence is not the same as self-obsession. There's a fine line between being self-aware and being self-centered. And once you cross that line, it's easy to push people away without even realizing it. If every conversation circles back to you, your problems, your success, your pain, your drama, then people will start to feel invisible around you. And no one enjoys feeling invisible. In fact, one of the fastest ways to make someone dislike you is to constantly make them feel like their voice doesn't matter. Think about it. Imagine pouring your heart out to someone, only for them to say, "Oh yeah, that reminds me of when I went through something even worse," or, "Well, I know exactly how that feels," and then hijack the entire conversation. How would that make you feel? Small, unimportant, unheard. People don't want to compete with you for attention. They don't want to constantly fight to get a word in. They want to be in conversations, not monologues. And if your default behavior is to bring everything back to yourself, no matter how subtly, you're sending the message that what they feel, what they think, what they go through doesn't really matter to you. This doesn't mean you can't share your experiences, but there's a time and place. Great communicators know when to listen. They know how to hold space for others without constantly inserting themselves. They understand that connection comes from mutual exchange, not domination. The truth is, constantly making things about yourself reveals a deeper insecurity. It screams, "I need attention to feel validated." It signals that you're still looking for significance in other people's approval instead of cultivating it within yourself. And when people pick up on that emotional hunger, they begin to pull back. Not because they hate you, but because they feel drained by the one-sided dynamic. Here's the shift. Focus on being present, not performative. When someone's speaking, don't just wait for your turn to talk. Actually listen. Ask thoughtful questions. Be curious about their world. When someone opens up to you, don't rush to compare pain or top their story. Just be there. Support them. Hold space. You'd be amazed how magnetic you become when people feel seen around you. Because at the end of the day, we all crave the same thing. To feel heard, to feel valued, to feel like we matter. So if you've noticed people backing away, if conversations always seem to fizzle, ask yourself honestly, have you made space for others, or have you made it all about you? Remember, you don't have to always be the center of attention to be powerful. Sometimes, the most influential thing you can do is give someone else the stage and simply listen. That's how respect is built. That's how connection grows. And that's how you go from being quietly resented to genuinely valued. You're never genuinely happy for others. There's something incredibly destructive about silent envy. You may not say it aloud, you may not even realize it fully, but if you feel a sting every time someone else wins, people notice. That subtle bitterness, that lack of celebration when others succeed, it creates an emotional distance that people can feel, even if you're smiling on the outside. Let's be real. Life is not a competition. Just because someone else is rising doesn't mean you're falling. Their success doesn't take away from your potential. But when you act like it does, when you downplay their wins, shift the conversation to your own struggles, or offer a forced congrats with a jealous undertone, you make people feel like they can't share their joy with you. And that's when they start to pull away. People want to be surrounded by those who clap for them, not those who secretly wish they'd fail. They want support, not silent sabotage. So when they sense that you're not really happy for them, they begin to resent your presence. Not because you've done something dramatic, but because your energy makes their moment feel smaller. This behavior often comes from a place of insecurity. Maybe you're not where you want to be yet. Maybe you feel stuck, overlooked, or behind. But here's the truth. Your season is coming. And when it does, how you treated people in their season will echo in yours. If you couldn't be happy for them when they were winning, don't expect them to be happy for you when it's your turn. Jealousy is natural, but staying there is a choice. Instead of letting it fester, let it fuel you. Instead of comparing, let others' success inspire you. Instead of shrinking when someone else shines, remind yourself that there's enough light for everyone. A mindset shift is necessary. When someone around you wins, celebrate them fully. Ask about their journey. Congratulate.
Aid them without turning it back to you. Let your support be loud, your encouragement sincere. When you genuinely lift others, you raise your own vibration too. If you want meaningful relationships, if you want people to speak your name in rooms you've never entered, you have to earn that respect by being a true ally, not a secret rival. Because here's what people remember, not just what you did, but how you made them feel. And if they constantly feel like they have to dim their light around you to avoid your jealousy, they'll eventually stop inviting you into their light altogether. So ask yourself, can you clap when it's not your turn? Can you cheer for others when your own path still feels uncertain? That's the test. That's what reveals character. And that's what separates the ones people admire from the ones they avoid. You constantly make everything about you. Let's face it, one of the quickest ways to drain the energy out of any room is to turn every conversation into a story about yourself. We've all met that person. You mention a tough week at work and they immediately start telling you how their job is 10 times harder. You share your joy and they hijack the moment to talk about their own victories. It's exhausting, and more importantly, it makes people feel invisible. When you make everything about you, what you're really saying is, my experience matters more than yours. And that message, whether intentional or not, cuts deep. People want to feel seen, heard, and valued, not constantly overshadowed by someone who can't let them have a moment. It's not always done with bad intentions. Some people do it out of habit or insecurity. They don't even realize they're doing it. But the impact is the same. It leaves others feeling like their voice doesn't matter, like their problems are small, like they're just background noise in a story where you're always the main character. Now listen carefully. Being heard is a human need, but dominating every conversation isn't the way to get it. Real connection comes from listening, not just speaking. From showing genuine interest in someone else's experience, even if it's different from yours. When you stop talking long enough to truly listen, you learn things, you build trust, you make people feel safe. And when people feel safe with you, they're drawn to you. That's how you build influence. That's how you build respect. But if people always walk away from conversations with you feeling overlooked or dismissed, don't be surprised when they start avoiding you altogether. You have to ask yourself, am I really engaging with others, or am I just waiting for my turn to speak? Am I uplifting others or competing with them for attention? Do I leave people if feeling hurt or just talked over? You don't have to have all the answers. You don't need to impress anyone. You just need to be present, be mindful, be generous with your attention. And here's the twist. When you stop trying to make everything about you, people actually like you more. They open up, they trust you. They invite you into deeper spaces in their lives because you've shown them that you care about them, not just yourself. So if you want to build real relationships, if you want to stop being the person people secretly can't stand, learn to share the stage. Let others speak. Let their stories breathe. Give them the spotlight without needing to grab it for yourself. Because humility is magnetic. And the truth is, when you finally stop making everything about you, people will start coming to you, not away from you. You constantly complain but never change. Let's be honest. Everybody has bad days. Life is tough sometimes, and yes, it's completely normal to vent, to express frustration, and to talk things out when you're feeling low. But there's a big difference between occasional venting and a chronic pattern of complaining that leads nowhere. If you're constantly speaking about how unfair life is, how nothing ever works out, how people treat you poorly, but you never take steps to change any of it, people start to tune you out. Why? Because after a while, your words stop sounding like cries for help and start sounding like noise. Negative, draining, helpless noise. People begin to feel like being around you is emotionally taxing. Like no matter what advice they give or support they offer, it won't make a difference. Because you don't want solutions. You want sympathy. You want attention. You want people to sit in the misery with you instead of helping you rise above it. And here's the truth. People can only carry your burdens for so long before they become weighed down themselves. If every time someone sees you, you're complaining about the same job, the same relationship, the same personal struggle without making a single effort to change your situation, you're not just keeping yourself stuck, you're pushing people away. You're becoming a source of stress, not support. And most people will eventually decide to protect their own peace by walking away. The hardest pill to swallow is this: complaining without action is just self-sabotage disguised as honesty. It feels like you're being real. It feels like you're just expressing yourself. But in reality, you're feeding the victim mindset, and that mindset will rob you of growth, of opportunity, and of meaningful relationships. People respect effort. Even if you're struggling, even if you haven't figured it all out yet, when people see that you're trying, that you're learning, that you're moving forward, they rally behind you. But when they see that you keep choosing the same patterns and rejecting every opportunity for growth, they quietly check out. This doesn't mean you have to be perfect. It means you need to be accountable. Instead of saying nothing ever changes, ask, what have I actually tried to change? Instead of repeating the same complaints, reflect on what those complaints are teaching you. What are they trying to push you toward? What action are you avoiding? The world doesn't hate broken people, but it does get tired of people who refuse to pick up the pieces. So stop rehearsing your problems and start rewriting your story. The more you take ownership of your life, the more people will respect you, support you, and want to be around you. Because energy is contagious. And when you shift from being a chronic complainer to a courageous changer, you stop repelling people and start attracting those who truly believe in your strength. You're always negative and bring the energy down. Negativity is like a virus. It spreads silently, infecting conversations, emotions, and the energy of every room you walk into. You might not even realize you're doing it. Maybe you think you're just being real or honest or telling it like it is. But when everything you say is laced with sarcasm, criticism, fear, or pessimism, people begin to associate your presence with one thing: emotional heaviness. Let's be clear. No one expects you to be positive all the time. That's not human. But there's a huge difference between occasionally feeling down and becoming the person who always sees the glass half empty, the sky always gray, and every good moment as something too good to last. It's exhausting. And the truth is, people avoid those who constantly bring them down. Why? Because life is hard enough. People are fighting their own battles. They're carrying their own weight. When they come around you, they're hoping for connection. Maybe some inspiration, maybe just a peaceful interaction. But if every conversation with you feels like a complaint, a judgment, or a warning of doom, it drains their spirit. You don't uplift, you deplete. You don't support, you discourage. And over time, people subconsciously begin to distance themselves from that kind of energy. Think about it. Have you ever walked away from a conversation with someone and felt heavier than before you spoke to them? That's what negativity does. It sticks, it lingers. And when it's consistent, people learn to protect themselves from it by limiting time with you or cutting you off entirely. The worst part? Negativity often disguises itself as intelligence. You might feel like you're just being wise, cautious, or insightful. But if all your insights lead to hopelessness, people will start to see your intelligence as cynicism. And no one is drawn to a constant downer. People want hope. They want vision. They want light. Now, this doesn't mean you have to fake happiness, but it does mean you need to be conscious of the energy you bring. Are you constantly pointing out problems, but never offering solutions? Are you the first to say why something won't work, rather than exploring how it could? Do people feel lighter or heavier after spending time with you? Negativity may feel like protection, but in reality, it isolates you. It makes people stop listening. It makes people stop inviting you. And eventually, it makes people stop caring. If you want deeper relationships, more support, and genuine connection, start shifting your language. Speak possibility, speak growth, speak strength, even when you're going through it. You don't have to be the sun, but don't always bring the storm. When your presence becomes a place of peace instead of pressure, people will want to be near you. And that shift begins with you. You can't celebrate others without making it about you. One of the clearest signs that people secretly dislike you is this: when you struggle to genuinely celebrate others without turning the spotlight back on yourself. Think about it.
How often do you interrupt someone's moment of joy with your own story? How often do you one-up their success, downplay their achievement, or shift the conversation back to your life? Maybe it's subtle. Your friend shares a promotion and you respond with, "That's great, but I was offered something even better last month." Or someone posts about their fitness journey and you comment, "I remember when I hit that milestone years ago." These aren't just random slips. They reveal a deeper insecurity, a need to constantly validate your worth by comparison. And trust me, people notice. No one wants to be around someone who can't let others shine. It creates tension. It breeds resentment. It makes people feel like your support is conditional, only given when you're not being overshadowed. And over time, this behavior makes you come across as self-centered, insecure, and emotionally immature. Here's the hard truth. Not everything is about you. And in healthy relationships, it shouldn't be. There will be times when others rise while you're still climbing. There will be moments when your peers succeed in areas where you've struggled. And if you can't clap for them genuinely, people will feel that energy, even if you say all the right words. Celebration isn't just about compliments. It's about presence. It's about showing up for others without resentment. It's about listening without comparing. It's about being secure enough in yourself to say, "I'm proud of you," and mean it, with no hidden agenda, no jealousy, no need to one-up. That's rare, and that's why people remember those who can do it. But when you can't, when your ego hijacks every conversation, and your insecurity can't handle someone else's moment in the sun, people begin to pull away. They stop sharing their wins with you. They hide their progress. Not because they're being secretive, but because they don't feel safe celebrating around you. And here's what's dangerous. This habit doesn't just cost you friendships, it ruins your own growth. Because when you're always comparing, always competing, always needing to be the best, you block the very lessons, connections, and collaborations that could elevate you. Want to be respected? Want to be admired? Want to be invited into powerful rooms? Learn to clap for others, loudly and without bitterness. Your ability to celebrate someone else's success is a reflection of your own emotional maturity and self-worth. The ones who rise the highest are often the ones who lift others as they go. So check yourself. Are you the type who shares joy or steals it? Because people don't forget how you made them feel, and nothing feels colder than a forced smile that hides quiet envy.
You drain people's energy without even realizing it. Here's the part no one wants to hear. Some people aren't disliked because they're loud, rude, or aggressive. Some are disliked because they're emotionally exhausting. And the truth is, you may not even realize you're draining the energy out of every room you walk into. Ask yourself this. Do people seem tired after talking to you? Do they take longer to reply to your messages? Do they always have something to do when you ask to meet? If so, it's not always about their schedule. It might be about your energy. Energy is contagious. Some people walk in and light up the room. Others walk in and suck all the air out of it. And while it's not always intentional, being constantly negative, complaining all the time, gossiping, or always focusing on problems rather than solutions can wear people out emotionally. When every conversation becomes about how hard your life is, how unfair things are, or how everyone's out to get you, it becomes less of a dialogue and more of an emotional burden. And eventually people begin to distance themselves, not because they don't care, but because they have their own lives to manage. They have their own stress, their own problems, their own emotional thresholds. And if your presence constantly adds to their weight rather than lightening it, they'll quietly back away. Being emotionally draining doesn't make you a bad person. Sometimes it's the result of unhealed trauma, unspoken pain, or just not knowing how to self-regulate. But here's the reality. It's still your responsibility to work through that. You can't expect people to carry what you refuse to deal with. Now, contrast that with emotionally healthy individuals, those who listen, uplift, and recharge you, the ones who know how to share their truth without dumping it on others. Those people are magnetic. They draw others in. They become top team cheats. Friends, partners, and coworkers everyone respects and wants around. The key is balance. It's okay to be vulnerable, to ask for help, to have bad days, but it's not okay to make every interaction about your struggles. If you're not also checking in on others, listening without interrupting, or offering encouragement without making it about you,
you might be draining more than you give. So take a step back. Audit how you show up in conversations. Are you a source of peace or a source of pressure? Do you leave people feeling heard or just overwhelmed? Your energy speaks louder than your words, and people are very intuitive about who they feel safe around. Don't be the person others avoid because it takes too much to be around you. Be the person who brings light, the one who respects emotional boundaries, the one who learns how to carry their weight so they don't always drop it on someone else. Because once people realize you exhaust them, they won't always tell you, but they will begin to disappear. You never take accountability for your actions. If there's one trait that silently destroys relationships, it's the inability to take accountability. People won't always confront you about it, but they will absolutely feel it, and they'll eventually pull away because of it. Let's break it down. When you hurt someone, ignore their needs, or cross a boundary, and then either deny it, shift the blame, or play the victim, you're not just avoiding responsibility. You're telling them that their pain doesn't matter, that your ego is more important than the truth. And over time, that becomes exhausting. No one likes being around someone who's always right. It's not empowering, it's suffocating. People don't expect perfection, but they do expect honesty. When you mess up, and you will mess up, do you own it or do you deflect? Do you say, I'm sorry, or do you say, well, it wouldn't have happened if you hadn't? The truth is, people respect humility more than pride. Being able to say, you're right, I hurt you and I take full responsibility, builds trust. It creates safety. It shows maturity. On the flip side, constantly avoiding responsibility tells others you can't be trusted with their emotions or their truth. And here's what often happens. If you repeatedly dodge accountability, people will stop opening up to you. They'll stop sharing how they feel. They'll stop giving you second chances. Not because they're unforgiving, but because they've finally accepted that you're not going to change. Here's a sign that you might struggle with accountability. You constantly feel misunderstood. You think people overreact or twist your words. But maybe it's not that everyone is misunderstanding you. Maybe it's that you're refusing to see your own patterns. Maybe you've built an identity around being the victim, and anything that challenges that identity feels like an attack. Growth star. It's when you stop defending your flaws and start confronting them. When someone tells you you've hurt them, that's not your cue to argue. It's your opportunity to reflect. Instead of saying, that wasn't my intention, try saying, I'm sorry it came across that way. That wasn't my intention, but I still take responsibility. Taking accountability doesn't make you weak. In fact, it makes you powerful. It shows that you are aware of your impact and that you care enough to make it right. And when people see that in you, they're more willing to stick around, even when things get hard. But when you always have an excuse, always a reason, always someone else to blame, people won't fight to stay in your life. They'll just quietly leave and find peace elsewhere. So if you've noticed people drifting away, ask yourself, am I hard to talk to when I'm wrong? Do I make others feel small when they try to express themselves? Because if you can't take accountability, eventually, no one will want to hold space for you. You constantly compete with others. Even when no one is competing with you, there's a certain energy that people can sense. A tension, a subtle aggression, a feeling that everything is a race and everyone is your opponent. When you constantly feel the need to outdo others, prove you're better, or dominate every conversation with your own success, people will slowly begin to distance themselves. Not because they're intimidated, but because it's exhausting. Let's be real. Not every moment is a battlefield. Not every friend is a rival. Not every achievement by someone else is a threat to your worth. Yet if you've developed a mindset where everything becomes a comparison, it means you're living in survival mode, even when no one is attacking you. It might not even be intentional. Maybe you just grew up in an environment where love was conditional. Maybe you were praised only when you performed. Maybe you were constantly compared to someone else. So now, without realizing it, you carry that same mentality into adulthood. You interpret someone else's success as your failure. You feel unseen unless you're being admired. But here's the truth. When you make everything a competition, you rob yourself of connection. People begin to feel like they have to downplay their wins to protect your ego.
They hesitate to open up about their dreams or progress because they know it will trigger your insecurity. And that's not connection, that's suppression. Friendships and relationships thrive when there's mutual celebration, not silent jealousy. They grow stronger when we lift each other up, not when we secretly keep score. You don't become more powerful by putting others down. You become lonely. And the sad part? You might not even notice it until it's too late. Because people won't always tell you why they pulled back. They won't say, "Gay, you made me feel small," or "I couldn't be myself around you." Instead, they'll just quietly fade. They'll stop inviting you. They'll stop confiding in you. And you'll be left wondering why you always feel like the outsider. You don't have to prove yourself to belong. You don't have to be the best to be loved. Real relationships aren't built on comparison. They're built on authenticity and support. If you want people to stay, be someone they can grow with, not someone they have to compete against. So pause for a moment and ask yourself, why do I always feel the need to be better? Where does that come from? And more importantly, what would happen if I let it go? You'll realize that peace comes when you no longer view people as competition, but as companions. You'll begin to attract deeper, more fulfilling relationships when you stop trying to win and start trying to connect. Because the only person you should be competing with is the person you were yesterday. You use silence as a weapon instead of a tool. Silence can be powerful, but only when it's used with wisdom. It can heal, ground, and offer space for reflection. But when silence is used to punish, control, or manipulate, it becomes toxic. It turns communication into a game of power and relationships into silent battlegrounds. When you shut down in the face of conflict, not to gather your thoughts, but to make the other person feel abandoned, you're not creating boundaries, you're creating distance. And distance, when repeated long enough, turns into disconnection. It may seem like you're winning by not reacting, but in truth, you're slowly losing the intimacy, trust, and respect of the people around you. Ask yourself this: do you go silent to keep the peace, or to make someone feel your absence? Do you hold back your words because you need time to think, or because you want them to suffer for hurting you? There's a difference between silence that protects your peace and silence that provokes pain. Some people believe they're being emotionally mature by not responding, but maturity isn't about avoidance, it's about communication. It's about being able to say, "I need space right now, but I care about this enough to come back and talk when I'm ready." It's about knowing how to express your feelings without needing to break someone with your absence. People are not mind readers. When you go silent without explanation, you leave them with unanswered questions and emotional confusion. They start overanalyzing every word, wondering what they did wrong, walking on eggshells in fear of triggering the next silent storm. That's not love. That's emotional manipulation, whether you realize it or not. You may think you're keeping your power by withholding your words, but true power lies in vulnerability, in saying, "That hurt me, but I'm willing to work through it," in saying, "I need some space, but I'm not abandoning you." That kind of communication builds trust. It fosters connection, and it sets the foundation for relationships that are resilient, not fragile. Understand this: you can't control people through absence and expect presence in return. You can't withdraw your voice every time something goes wrong and then wonder why people stop talking to you. Silence should be your shield, not your sword. A place to recharge, not a punishment to inflict. If you want deep, meaningful relationships, you must learn to speak, not just to be heard, but to be understood. And if you truly want to be understood, you must offer others the same grace you hope to receive. So next time you're tempted to go silent, ask yourself, am I protecting my peace, or am I punishing someone for not reading my mind? Because when silence is used with clarity and compassion, it becomes a bridge. But when it's used with bitterness, it becomes a wall. And the more walls you build, the lonelier your castle becomes. You don't know the difference between solitude and isolation. There's a fine line between solitude and isolation, and many walk that line without realizing when they've crossed over. Solitude is a choice. It's sacred. It's the act of being alone without being lonely. It's a space where healing begins, creativity flows, and self-awareness deepens. When you embrace solitude, you're choosing to connect with yourself, to listen to your own voice, to breathe without distraction,
to grow without noise. It's an act of self-respect and self-preservation. But isolation, that's different. Isolation isn't a peaceful retreat. It's a silent prison. It's when you disconnect not just from others, but from your own emotions. It's when you convince yourself you're better off alone, not because you enjoy your own company, but because you no longer trust the world around you. You're not retreating for clarity. You're hiding out of fear. There are moments in life when pulling away is necessary. You need space to heal, to think, to rebuild. But the danger lies in staying there too long. When solitude becomes your comfort zone and isolation becomes your default, you start to believe a dangerous lie, that needing people makes you weak. You start saying things like, "I'm fine on my own," when deep down, you're craving connection. You start pushing people away before they get too close, because it feels safer than being vulnerable. You confuse emotional independence with emotional detachment, but real strength isn't found in cutting everyone off. Real strength is being able to stand alone, but still choosing to connect. Isolation may feel like control, but it comes at a cost. It dulls your joy. It hardens your heart. It numbs your ability to receive love, even when it's offered freely. The longer you isolate, the harder it becomes to let anyone in, even yourself. You stop checking in with your feeling. GS. You stop reaching out when you need support, and eventually you forget what it felt like to be truly seen. Solitude is restorative, isolation is corrosive. The key is intention. When you're in solitude, you're intentional about your time alone. You journal, reflect, breathe, realign. When you're isolating, you're avoiding. You distract yourself. You scroll endlessly. You silence your phone not for peace, but to block out reality. You tell yourself you're protecting your energy, but what you're really doing is running from connection. We weren't made to do life completely alone. Even the strongest among us need others, not to complete us, but to remind us that we're not alone in our journey. Growth doesn't always happen in isolation. Sometimes it happens in community, in conversation, in the presence of those who hold space for us without judgment. So if you've been mistaking isolation for solitude, pause and ask yourself, am I choosing peace or avoiding pain? Because one will heal you, the other will slowly break you down. You think being a strong woman means never needing help. Let's shatter this myth once and for all. Being a strong woman does not mean you have to carry the entire world on your shoulders in silence. Strength is not defined by how much pain you can endure without flinching. It's not measured by how many burdens you can bear before breaking down. Real strength, true, resilient, soul-deep strength, often looks like admitting you need support. Somewhere along the way, society taught women that vulnerability is weakness, that asking for help means you're incapable, emotional, or unstable. And many women internalized this belief so deeply that they started rejecting any form of assistance, even when drowning. They became so used to being the strong one that the idea of leaning on someone else felt like betrayal to their identity. But let me tell you this, needing help doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. You don't lose your power by saying, "I can't do this alone." In fact, it's in that very moment that your power evolves, because only the truly strong can admit their limits. Only the truly wise know when it's time to drop the cape and stop playing the superhero. You've been conditioned to smile through the pain, to keep going even when your soul is screaming for rest. You've become the go-to for everyone else, the counselor, the problem solver, the backbone, and you wear that badge with pride. But the truth is, being strong for everyone else while neglecting your own needs is not strength. It's self-abandonment. Strength is setting boundaries. It's saying no. It's reaching out and saying, "I'm struggling, and I need someone to hear me without fixing me." It's having the courage to speak up before you reach your breaking point. It's allowing yourself to be poured into instead of constantly pouring out. So if you've been walking through life convinced that you have to handle everything alone, pause. Reflect. Ask yourself, what would happen if I let someone in? What would happen if, just for a moment, I allowed myself to be held instead of always doing the holding? You're not less of a woman for needing rest. You're not less powerful for craving connection. In fact, your ability to nurture, to love, to lead, it all thrives when you yourself are supported. Being strong is beautiful, But being whole is even better. You don't have to trade one for the other. Stop measuring your worth by how invincible you appear. You're allowed to fall apart and rebuild. You're allowed to be soft and still powerful. You're allowed to be a masterpiece and a work in progress, all at once. Because the strongest women, they know when to rise and when to reach out. Own your power. Redefine your worth. You've just walked through 20 truths, hard-hitting, soul-awakening, deeply reflective truths. Each one designed not to tear you down, but to call you out and build you back stronger. Not stronger in the way the world defines it, but in the way you were always meant to be, authentic, unapologetic, and aligned with your divine power. Every single misconception we broke down was rooted in something deeper: conditioning, pain, generational patterns, and the fear of being misunderstood. But here's the beauty of awareness. Once your eyes are open, you can never unsee what your soul has recognized. You've realized that being strong doesn't mean being silent, that confidence isn't found in validation, but in your own quiet decisions. That being emotional isn't a flaw, it's a force. That needing help doesn't subtract from your strength, it multiplies your humanity. Now you stand at a crossroads. You can either go back to the old version of yourself, the one who smiled to please, who stayed small to fit in, who carried shame like a second skin, or you can step into the woman you were born to be. The woman who knows that she is powerful, not because she never struggled, but because she never gave up. Real transformation happens when you stop pretending and start living, when you stop proving and start becoming, when you stop explaining and simply exist, freely, fiercely, and fully. You're not here to impress anyone, you're here to express the fullest version of yourself. And that version, she's not afraid to be seen, she's not afraid to say no, she's not afraid to walk away, start over, speak up, or be alone if it means protecting her peace. This isn't about becoming someone else. This is about coming home to yourself. The woman who rises not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. The woman who knows her worth isn't defined by who loves her, who chooses her, or who claps for her. She knows her worth because she took the time to learn it, to fight for it, to embody it. So take a breath. Look at how far you've come, not just in life, but in truth, in reclaiming the parts of you that you once hid or abandoned. You are no longer available for anything less than respect, alignment, and purpose. You don't owe the world a watered-down version of you. You owe yourself everything. And as you walk forward, owning your strength, honoring your softness, releasing your guilt, and rewriting your identity, remember this: you were never too much. You were just never in the right place to be celebrated. Now you are. Stop shrinking. Start shining. The world needs the real you. You don't have to prove your worth. Just walk in it. She who walks in truth doesn't chase validation. She attracts respect. You are not here to survive. You are here to soar. Let them wonder how you did it. Let your growth be the loudest response.